on the next Kelly and Company. The first of our TV cast reunions.
For years, we all look forward to Saturday night when the magic of television transported us to the home of Dr. and Mrs. Bob Hartley in Chicago.
We're going to meet some of the zany characters from the original Bob Newhart show.
And then at 10, it's Oprah.
Women who have affairs with married men on the next Oprah Winfrey Show.
That's Kelly at 9, Oprah at 10, weekday mornings right here on 7. Ghost Story, late night tonight on Channel 7. How can a young man be beaten to death with a baseball bat by another man and not have his civil rights violated? That is a question that a lot of people are asking tonight. Good evening, everybody. After a series of trials and appeals, legal maneuvers, bargaining, and courtroom battles, a man from East Detroit is free of criminal charges tonight for the first time since he killed another man with a baseball bat in Highland Park nearly 5 years ago. What is left tonight is the guilt the killer may feel, the loss the victim's friends and family must now cope with for the rest of their lives, and the lingering finger by many people that the legal system somehow failed in the killing of Vincent Chin. Ronald Ebens, one of the two men who pleaded guilty to manslaughter in Chin's death, was acquitted, found not guilty on charges that he violated Chin's civil rights. That decision by a jury in Cincinnati, almost 5 years after Chin was beaten to death following an argument at a bar where he was having his bachelor party. Chin's killing took place outside the Fancy Pants Lounge in Highland Park. In a plea bargaining session, his killers were fined and placed on probation. Following an outcry over that, there were 2 trials for Ronald Ebens on charges that he violated Vincent Chin's civil rights. The second trial in Cincinnati ended today with his acquittal.
I'm still very sorry about what happened, okay?
What's that?
You say I'm still very sorry about the death that occurred. I mean, you got to realize how relieved I am, you know, after 4 years of waiting for this to be over with. And that's really all I have to say on it.
Ron, why did you testify?
There was nothing I could have added. Everything had been said by everybody else.
Ebens' lawyers went from the guilty verdict of the first civil rights trial in Detroit to an acquittal in the retrial in Cincinnati.
The key was a fair trial in a fair venue because the press poisoned the venue in Detroit. That was the key to a fair verdict. And the key was also getting the tapes in the evidence, which showed that this case was a frame-up from the beginning, a put-together case. And this is a fair verdict because we had a fair trial with fair evidence.
Well, the tapes that the lawyer referred to recorded a prosecutor talking to witnesses in the case, improperly coaching those witnesses, at least according to Ebens' lawyers, because the judge of the first trial refused to put those tapes into evidence. An appeals court ordered the second trial for Ebens. This whole case revolved around whether the death of Vincent Chin was the result of Ebens' prejudice against Asians, or was instead, as the jury apparently found, the death of a man that was the result of a drunken brawl. Members of the Chinese-American community are bitter about that. They say justice was denied in the Vincent Chin case.
There's still an ongoing problem of racism against Asian Americans. Even though this particular jury was not convinced of that fact, I don't think there's any Asian in this country who would think otherwise, knowing the facts of the case.
Jim, do you accept the jury's verdict that this was not a racial killing?
Personally, I will never accept that verdict. The jurors heard the testimony, and they have developed their own opinion of the facts. As far as I'm concerned, this was a racial killing.
Ronald Ebens is thus free of criminal charges this evening, but he apparently is not done with courts and lawyers and judges just yet. His victim's mother, Mrs. Chin, has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against him in Wayne County Circuit Court, seeking damages for the loss of her son. Dana?
For Ronald Ebens, his family and friends, the long ordeal that he began with the beating death of Vincent Chin would appear to be coming to an end. Tonight, Channel 7's Ken Ford visited the East Detroit neighborhood where Ebens lives, and Ken has more on neighbors' reaction to the Cincinnati verdict.
Ronald Ebens chose to drive back from Cincinnati, and no one was answering the door at his East Detroit home tonight. Outside, I talked with Ebens' stepson, Michael Neitz. He refused to be interviewed on camera, but told me he was happy, and that tonight is Ebens' night. Neitz and Ebens were both charged with killing Vincent Chin. It's unlikely that anybody on this quiet residential street could be unaware of what Ebens has been through these past 5 years. I spoke with some of his neighbors, asked for reaction.
They're really good people, and it could happen to anybody. You know, it could happen to my husband, it could happen to anybody in my family. It's just one of those things.
If you lived across the street and somebody's like that living next to you, what are you going to say? You know, you put me on a spot.
You just don't walk away after you've killed a man. I don't care for what reason, whether it was a drunken brawl or whether it was for racial means. or whatever. You just don't absolutely go and beat a man to death with a baseball bat.
There's been no organized Chinese-American reaction yet, but Vincent Chin's mother was distraught. She told me she knew the jury would return the verdict it did, and she said there was no justice in that decision. The kind of opinions expressed by some of his neighbors today are the same opinions held by a lot of other people in a lot of other places. As a result, it seems it will be a long time, if ever, before Ronald Ebens can go back to being just an ordinary person, an ordinary neighbor in this quiet neighborhood. In East Detroit, I'm Ken Ford, Channel 7 Action News reporting.
The verdict is also in tonight from the latest gun sweep at Detroit High School, and the results are encouraging. School security officers, with the help of Detroit policemen, checked 3,000 students at Osborn High for weapons. They turned up only a few razor blades, penknives, and sharp combs. This is the second sweep since a student was shot to death at Murray Wright High last month. School Superintendent Dr. Arthur Jefferson tells Channel 7's Mike Hofeld tonight the searches appear to be doing the job.
We will continue the sweeps for the rest of this school year. We are appreciative of the cooperation from our students, from our staff, and from our parents. They don't feel harassed. They don't feel intimidated, as far as I can tell. And what they do feel is that it is something that is being done to better protect them.
Jefferson also told Channel 7 News tonight his office has received no complaints from parents since the random searches were reinstated this week. Bill?
More on that arms deal with Iran. It was an admission that should have made the bells ring and the sirens to scream, but it did not. Declassified FBI document showing tonight that former National Security aide Oliver North told the FBI 2 years ago that he was actually helping to raise private funds for the Contras from his job in the White House. At the time, that was against the law for government officials to send military aid to the rebels in Nicaragua. But the FBI, including the FBI Director William Webster, did nothing about North's admission. That fact came out at Senate confirmation hearings for Mr. Webster.
His confirmation hearings do suggest that the FBI, and to some extent Judge Webster himself, did not respond to clear warnings to stop Lieutenant Colonel North's improper, if not illegal, activities.
The FBI chief, Webster, said that he never learned about Ollie North's admission that he was aiding the Contras. Webster said that that happened because of some trouble transmitting a teletype message 2 miles from one FBI office in Washington to another FBI office. The Senate Intelligence Committee evidently accepted that explanation, voting 15-0 in favor of confirming Webster as the new head of this nation's CIA. Former television evangelist Jim Bakker is denying tonight that he has any plans at all to wage any kind of a holy war to regain his lost religious empire and big salary. Bakker and his wife Tammy have been in seclusion at their Palm Springs, California home since the PTL scandal broke. They met reporters who have been waiting at the gate of their home to tell them they're on the road to spiritual recovery.
We just wanted to come and say hello to you today, and I know you've been standing out in this hot sun for a long time, and Tammy and I are alive. We may not be too well, but we're alive.
One thing I'd like to say, Jim, I often wondered if the gospel that we preached would work for us. And I'm glad to stand here today to say that the gospel that we preach really does work.
Without a miracle of God, we will never minister again. I have never been involved with wife swapping.
Never.
I'm not a homosexual.
Right.
And I've never been to a prostitute.
So those who are hurting and suffering today, hang in there. The sun will shine again.
And so we just want everyone to begin to love one another, and that the church world will love one another, that the people of God will not fight.
When asked about their future plans, the Bakkers told reporters they really do not have any plans at this point, but Jim Bakker says he is thinking about writing a book about his recent problems and troubles. Dana?
Still ahead tonight on Action News, we'll wrap up our exclusive report on one of the leaders of the hate movement in America, Robert Miles. Hundreds of people in Metro Detroit rally against communism tonight. And the Red Wings win tonight to take the playoffs back to Detroit. Those stories and more when Action News Update continues.
Sometime this year, a jury is going to be picked in Fort Smith, Arkansas, to hear Uncle Sam's case against 15 of the top leaders of the white separatist movement in America. The leaders of the radical right were indicted and charged last week with plotting to violently overthrow the government of the United States. One of those leaders is 62-year-old Robert Miles of Livingston County, Michigan. In tonight's Target 7 report on Robert Miles, Channel 7 investigative reporter Vince Wayne explains what led to the grand jury indictment of Miles and the others.
He is either the number one or number two person in the American hate movement. I would argue that he's probably the number one person.
That assessment of Robert Miles by Richard Lobenthal of the Detroit Jewish Anti-Defamation League is apparently shared by a federal grand jury in Fort Smith, Arkansas. The grand jury investigation was based on two incidents that provided important evidence. One was a standoff between the FBI and a white separatist group known as the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. That occurred in the Ozark Mountains of northern Arkansas in April 1985. Agents arrested James Ellison, the CSA leader, who allegedly had close ties to Robert Miles and the other top leaders of the radical right. Ellison is expected to testify for the government at the upcoming trial. Asa Hutchinson was the U.S. attorney in the Western District of Arkansas during the time of the CSA siege.
As we searched the CSA compound after we had the siege and executed a search warrant, we found a security file in which they had the names and addresses and wives' names in some instances of people that they were targeting, that they were doing surveillance on.
The targets included Arkansas federal judge H. Franklin Waters and FBI agent Jack Knox. A $3.6 million armored car robbery in Ukiah, California also provided important clues. Federal agents traced the money and found that it led them to some of the top leaders of the white separatist movement. Near the end of the Fort Smith grand jury investigation, Robert Miles was offered a deal. The essence of it was he would get lighter treatment if he agreed to testify against the other leaders of the radical right. It was an offer Robert Miles refused. As a result, Miles was arrested last Friday and held without bond as a threat to the community and the nation at large. Through his tone of voice and the words he chooses carefully for public consumption, Robert Miles makes it clear he views himself as a martyr for the cause of white separatism, a cause his critics and the federal government view as a thin disguise for neo-Nazism.
This isn't going to end with us. We're the first going to the new stakes of the Neo-Inquisition. And I'm not particularly honored by it. It's like the fellow being ridden out of town on a rail with tar and feathers on him. He says, it wasn't for the honor, I'd just as soon walk. And that's about the way I feel. I know that any prison term I receive is a death sentence now. I'm too old to come back.
It is impossible, of course, to predict what will happen to Robert Miles in the Fort Smith case. But regardless of the outcome, one thing is certain. Robert Miles won't be quiet. From Fort Smith, Arkansas, Vince Wade, Channel 7 Action News reporting.
Today, May 1st, is a national holiday in many parts of the world, and behind the Iron Curtain, it is the one day set aside to show off military muscle. The biggest show of force was in the Soviet Union, where tanks and soldiers marched proudly in Red Square. Soviet leader Gorbachev led the thousands of parade watchers on this, the Soviets' most important holiday. In Allen Park tonight, about 1,500 people turned out for what was billed as an anti-May Day rally. Organizers hoped the local display would put people on guard about the dangers of Marxism and socialism. The rally was also held to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the U.S. Constitution.
Otherwise, the first weekend of the new month, May, leaves much to be desired. May leave us wishing it was still April. Jerry steps in with the computerized forecast when The Update continues in just a moment. Word is we're in for a blizzard Sunday night. Joe Lewis, a blizzard of pucks by the Red Wings.
Boy, I'll say.
It's going to be hot down there, Jerry.
Oh, is it ever? Yeah, it's easy to predict that right now. No problem at all.
Sure is.
Virtually guarantee that. Well, there's nothing wrong with this weekend at about 10 more degrees and some more sunshine couldn't cure. We've got, well, some mediocre weather coming up. In any event, today we rounded off at 61 degrees for a high, 39 degrees for a low, and we did pick up a trace of rainfall here in the metro area tonight, just some scattered showers. 54 at this hour with cloudy skies and a sprinkle here and there. Winds are out of the northwest at 10 miles. The barometer is steady, and the humidity climbing. It's now at 55%. The air is getting more humid after being dry all week long, and that's what's bringing in the clouds and the wet stuff. Temperatures across the UP, though, are in the 30s right now. 30 degrees at Marquette. The air is much drier, much colder, obviously, up there, while here in the south, we're, well, some 26 degrees warmer. 56 now at Detroit City Airport, everybody else in between. The warm air is still well off to the south and to the west. They had cities registering new record highs today in places like Iowa and Kansas, 89 at Kansas City, and Topeka today for record highs, 93 at Sioux City, Iowa. Down in Mobile, Alabama, they had 91. Pensacola, Florida doesn't need a record, but they had 88 degrees. The warm air is just off to our south and west. In fact, in southern Minnesota today, they had temperatures in the 90s, and up to the north, temperatures were only in the 50s in Minneapolis. So that's where the dividing line is between this hot and muggy stuff and the cooler, drier air that's covering the Detroit area. And right along this frontal pattern, where the moisture is, there are some scattered showers and some thunder showers. And these are moving off very rapidly now at about 50 miles an hour. We're picking up the last of them on the Weather Service radar. You can see them moving out of southwest Detroit and on into the western end of Lake Erie, again, very rapidly, and they're beginning to break up and shrink in size, so it looks as if, for the time being anyway, we're seeing the last of the rain. We might see some more tomorrow. This system is going to hang around for the weekend. That warm, humid air is going to still try to push on up here. I don't think it's going to make it, though. The dry stuff's going to hang on, and we're going to find ourselves with a fairly decent weekend, but there'll be some clouds here and there. Some heavy thunder showers off to the west tonight, down through the Rockies, nothing that we have to concern ourselves with. This frontal pattern right here, the dividing line between the summer-like weather down south and the more spring-like weather up to the north, is going to touch off some more scattered showers. I think we're going to stay in the dry zone, though, as our temperatures will only be in the 60s tomorrow. We'll just have some scattered clouds, and at least the risk of the scattered shower, I think the risk is only about 20% or so, maybe very brief and, for the most part, light. Up north, it's going to be sunny. Temperatures will be in the 50s, while here in the south in the lower 60s tomorrow. By Sunday, the threat of rain should have ended, and in fact, we'll see skies clear as we go through the afternoon, and we'll get plenty of sunshine before the day is out. So all in all, not a terrific weekend, but then again, not all bad either. Here are the details to our forecast. We're calling for cloudy skies for the rest of the morning hours. Again, there may be a scattered shower, but it'll be light, 45 the overnight low. Saturday, again, we still run the risk of a shower, but like tonight, it's going to be very brief and very light, 63 degrees the high. If we get any rain at all, it'll be out of here by tomorrow night, and we'll have northeasterly winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. By Sunday, things will be clearing up. We'll at least have a partly sunny day, 63 the high. Early next week, things begin to warm up under sunny skies for Monday and Tuesday, back up into the 70s. Wednesday, the clouds return, but I'll tell you, we're ready for the 70-degree stuff to happen any time.
Any time would be preferable this weekend, but we can wait a little while.
115 out at the Joe Sunday night.
They'll have their own
You know, they've already scheduled their charter plane for Edmonton, Jared. That's confidence, I guess, right?
Well, it worked, the other night?
Yeah,
so.
it sure did.
Good luck, Jared.
Okay, thanks, Jared. Quick look now at some of the other items making news around the Detroit metropolitan area this evening. Some very angry, upset General Motors employees are demanding an end to plant shutdowns. About 100 employees from the Fleetwood plant picketed GM's headquarters. They were joined by U.S. Congressman John Conyers, Detroit Democrat, who is now sponsoring a bill that would place restriction on companies that shut down plants. 22 people in Pittsfield Township tonight staying in makeshift housing because an early morning fire swept through their apartment building. No one was injured in the blaze, which broke out in a utility room on the ground floor. Detroit Mayor Coleman Young tonight pushing for a hike in the admission fee at the Detroit Zoo. However, the higher price of $5 for adults would eliminate, we are told, extra charges for parking and taking train rides. If the city council okays the one-price admission plan, it is scheduled to go into effect on July the 1st. Dana?
A mid-air collision in the skies over Orlando, Florida, killed 4 people on board 2 airplanes and showered a subdivision with wreckage. There were no injuries on the ground. The planes involved were a skywriting aircraft of World War II vintage and a small Cessna. The victims were the 2 pilots and 2 passengers who were on board the Cessna. The collision took place about 3,000 feet up and about 5 miles northwest of Orlando Executive Airport. The FAA is investigating the crash, which took place in clear skies with visibility of 7 miles. Bill?
Klima bench, Stephen sitting, I don't know, maybe in the bleachers. Nonetheless, the Red Wings won a big game tonight in Toronto, 4-2. Great effort by the whole team. And the Pistons in action tonight, or somebody that looks like the Pistons, Stu Kleitenic. We'll have all the sports, and we'll have a report from Steve Garagiola on the Red Wings tonight in Toronto. In just a moment. Japanese Prime Minister Nakasone tonight returning home minus the trade agreement he had hoped to gain with the U.S. For the past 2 days, Nakasone has been trying to persuade President Ronald Reagan to lift those sanctions against a number of Japanese products, but he was not successful. However, President Reagan did end the talks on an optimistic note, saying that he aims to lift the tariff just as soon as possible. That kind of puts the ball in Tokyo's court. Michigan Congressman John Dingell, however, also met with Mr. Nakasone, and he speculates the only way the U.S. is going to balance trade with Japan is to continue the tough sanctions.
The Prime Minister indicated that the Japanese will be taking steps to ease the problem. Whether they will be steps that would be satisfactory to any of those of us who were present this morning is very much open to question. My personal feelings are that Mr. Nakasone will not make the necessary change without enormous pressure.
How big is this imbalance? Well, the trade imbalance between the U.S. and Japan tilts in favor of the Japanese by more than $58 billion just last year. Charging Japan violated an agreement where it promised to expand the sale of imports. President Reagan imposed tariffs against about $300 million worth of Japanese products. That's really peanuts when you think about the total business. Mr. Nakasone and President Reagan will meet in early June, along with 5 other nations, for the annual economic summit in Venice, but so many of those leaders in the Western nations are in trouble that nothing important is expected to come out of that get-together. Dana?
Interest rates in this country may be ready to take off tonight. Major banks across the nation today raised their prime rate a quarter point higher to 8%. The higher rate is the result of the Federal Reserve tightening credit. Economists believe that further increases in the prime rate are possible this year. Bill?
The big one in Toronto. Wings did not look all that quick tonight, but they won the game. It's pretty good when you win, you don't play all that well.
Yeah, so that means something.
They don't care.
You know, the final score.
That was great, Bill.
That was a good analysis. Maybe we'll get it for Game 7. We'll have Bill Bonds as our special hockey expert. He will be here. You've got a hot goaltender. You can go a long way in the playoffs. I think Glenn Hanlon could have stopped an Amtrak train tonight. He wins his 3rd playoff game. Wings 4, Toronto 2. You've got Game 7 at Joe Louis on Sunday here in town. I want to take you back to Maple Leafs Garden tonight. Take a look at Glenn Hanlon. Human roadblock. Look at the stop on Steve Thomas. Between the legs? No. Russ Courtnall will shoot it. Watch him lay out his body. I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for Hanlon, they could have crossed the border early tonight. The team who has scored first has won. Probert to Gerard Gallant. It is 1-0 after 1. Leafs on the power play. Watch the left-hand top of your screen. Wendell Clark just works his way in there. No chance for Hanlon. 1-1 after 1. Leafs want to take over on the home ice. Vincent Damphousse puts it in. It's 2-1. Wings show some guts. They come right back. Mike O'Connell, watch Adam Oates tip it in. We're 2-2 after 2. We go to the 3rd. Gerard Gallant will work it out. They get it to Bob Probert, who had a great game. He puts it in. That was the game winner, 3-2. Jacques Demers' stomach was like a wearing blender. And then the open net goal by Sean Burr. It is a 4-2 final. We got Game 7 for you Sunday. Steve Garagiola in Toronto talked to Jacques Demers and Bob Probert about the win.
As we left you at 6 o'clock, Coach Jacques Demers said, "We're coming back, Detroit." Coach Jacques Demers, we're coming back, Detroit.
Well, we did say that, Steve, and we felt good before the game. A lot of people said to me, "How come you're so relaxed?" I said, "Well, I'm relaxed because I believe our players could do it. These guys are unbelievable." It said it took a miracle for us to come back from a 2-0 deficit and a 3-1, and you know, let's face it, it's not over yet, but it looks awfully good.
You guys have been climbing the mountain for 10 days now. Your back's against the wall and all that. All of a sudden now, the tide has really turned.
That's right, Steve. You know, we're so happy to come back. And, folks, give these guys a hand when we come back. They need it. They're tired. And as we did the other night, and that's why we won 3-0. And we're going to give it our best shot, and we're coming back to play to go into a 3rd round.
It all comes down to one game now. You know, home ice doesn't have much of an advantage here. As you've seen, the first 2 games we lost at home, and we beat Toronto at home. So it's going to be interesting.
Everything went our way. You know, Glenn Hanlon, he's the miracle worker, not Demers. He's done a fantastic job with the 19 other guys supporting him. Even I saw Greg Stephan in there tonight cheering on the guys in Klima. What more can you want? It's like a dream come true. But I don't want to get carried away because we still have that number 1 game that's very, very important to play in Detroit Sunday.
These guys got to come in sky high.
They will. Not too high, but high enough to know what they have to do.
All right, thank you, Coach. The story here tonight is Red Wings win. It is coming back to Detroit for the deciding Game 7. In Toronto, I'm Steve Garagiola, Channel 7 Sports.
All right, Jacques gets about as good a workout as the players do. Again, Sunday will be Game 7. All right, if you're a Red Wing, you know who you play in the next round if you get by Toronto. That's Edmonton. The Pistons were still wondering, not after tonight, because they will play the Atlanta Hawks in the 2nd round on Sunday. Atlanta, 101, Indiana, 97. We go to Indianapolis. Dominique Wilkins just took this one over tonight. Down the stretch, he got the big hoops. So Atlanta beats the Pacers 101 to 97. Want to take you to Philadelphia, Game 4, Sixers against Milwaukee. Who took over in this one? The round mound of rebounds. Charles Barkley throw that ball down. He was dominant. Julius Erving, 16 seasons. Hey, he can still play. Puts the Sixers ahead. They will go to Game 5 because Philadelphia over Milwaukee, 124 to 118. Game 4, by the way, in Milwaukee will be this Sunday. I've got something new for you on the Lions' #1 draft pick, Reggie Rogers. No, he is not close to signing, but he may be close to something else, and it's not good. He's going to be charged with something they called gross misdemeanor assault. I can't give you a big legal definition on that, but if he's guilty, he can go to jail for 1 year, can get a $5,000 fine. What's he accused of doing? Throwing his ex-girlfriend against the wall. They were arguing about a purse he had given her. Tigers 1-0 in the fourth. The Tigers are losing to Oakland. Let me just remind you of one thing. Bill Bonds picked this game 4-2. Toronto losing to the Red Wings. So we give you this one, Billy.
Well, it's just, they brought a lot of fun to Detroit this year, the Red Wings.
Sure.
Made a lot of people smile.
It's nice, isn't it? To
And
see it come back like that.
It really is. Worst, and they could end up in the finals. Terrific. Thanks, Stu.
Okay.
Good job. There is something special on the menu in a great city called Hamtramck. We'll take a look at that story and have more information for you in just a moment. Be right back. Hamtramck just may have the most interesting food and people in all of North America. A lot of people turning out in Hamtramck tonight celebrating the 19th annual Strawberry Festival. In addition to music and entertainment and good, interesting people, strawberry lovers have the opportunity to enjoy all kinds of delicious creations made of strawberries, including pies, jellies, and sundaes. The Strawberry Festival continues Saturday and Sunday, and guess what? It's free, which is the right price for sure. Dana?
These stories developing tomorrow, and Action News will be following them for you. TV journalist Mike Wallace may face a sizable protest when he delivers the commencement address at the University of Michigan. Detroiters plan to form a human chain in a show of solidarity to save the city's older neighborhoods. And for the first time, you will have the chance to bet at local tracks in the Run for the Roses. Bill?
Kind of a nice story on which to end a week of news. There's some excellent progress to report this evening for Andy Jackson, a severely burned infant who received an experimental kind of skin graft. Almost 2 weeks ago, doctors at Sparrow Hospital grafted 35 patches of skin onto this little baby, who was then just 11 weeks old. Skin was grown at Children's Hospital in Detroit from the baby's own tissue. It almost sounds like science fiction, but it is not. It is for real. Today, doctors removed the bandages and found that these skin grafts are growing well with no signs of any kind of an infection. It'll take, we are told, at least another 3 weeks before doctors know for sure that this almost kind of experimental operation turns out to be a complete success. We wish the little guy well.
He's a little fighter.
Yeah, 11 weeks old. Hope he makes it. Anyway, Ted Koppel's next on Nightline. You have a pleasant, peaceful weekend, and we'll see you Monday at 5. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Good night.